Hello, my name is Roman Gingiashvili, and today's topic is very unusual. It's still about openings, but the topic is unusual. We are not going to be discussing the best lines, how to get advantage on this or that opening, but we will talk at first about the strategy and purpose of the opening and how useful is certain opening. Well, I mentioned in past several times that in the opening is not as important to have little advantage as to know the position you're going to play and to be very, very comfortable in the position, even if you don't have an advantage. The advantage you're going to have, especially when it's not on the highest level of chess, the advantage you're going to have knowing position better than your opponent. And if you don't play very top GM, then likely your opponent is not going to be able to play this opening on the level you will, because you will know it better. And this very, very frequently, I can't even tell you how many times I got nearly winning positions playing the openings that not like Rui Lopez and a regular classical variation of Sicilian. I play the openings that I know the best. For example, Scotch Gambit, Two Knights Defense. But I know them so well, and I have so much analyzed there, and I know positions or how to play them. And, well, okay, I am playing on a higher level, but even my students, when they play on much lower level, and they play opponents better than they are, they get very frequently winning position. Quite often they just win in the opening, not just getting winning position, but just win, just end the game right in the opening. So it's very, very important to know very well positions you're going to play. Now, what we're going to do today, we're going to be discussing kind of various possibilities and kind of departing from the main theoretical line and playing rather unusual systems. Not very unusual. Well, unusual systems, a lot of people like to play, but the reason they are doing is very, very wrong. Reasoning and the way people are doing. And this is very important, and you have to know it. Very frequently, people try to play unusual, very sharp lines that are simply bad, and relying on your opponent doesn't know the lines and you can trap him. Or play some highly anti-positional strategy. This is very bad, and I'm strongly against it. What I suggest, and I want to try, what I'm trying to recommend is to play variations and systems that by no means they will violate basic principles of chess. We're going to be doing the same development. Development is going to be the topic of main driving source of our opening, but we're going to develop little differently, and at all points you're going to have at least equal position, but you will know it so well that it's going to be a lot more beneficial than the best moves in a modern chess theory. And again, if you are watching this tape, I don't expect you to be on the top of the world, and so, like, I don't expect you to be in the list of best players in the world, because it's not aimed for those people. So moves we're gonna make will be based on basic opening strategy, basic rules of chess. At the same time, they're gonna be very, very unexpected. Well, not gonna be the main lines. That chances are that you're gonna know the systems a lot better than your opponent. Well, these systems I developed. I have some pilot games that I based developing these games on, these variations on, and I developed together with Rybkas, and you will see quite a different from the modern chess theory, but very careful and very lengthy analysis and practically exhausting analysis. I exhausted every possibility for our opponent. We came to conclusion that at all times white has tiny bit of edge, never less than equality. And the last point I want to make before finishing my introduction is I have to point that you don't have the luxury of doing it and making this principle and this approach to work for black. This can be only used by white, because the idea of playing a little bit diversified from the main variation, you can get away with white and at the same time have very interesting positional idea without violating rules. You can do it for white. Maybe you can do it in a very rare occasion for black, but mostly with white. So here our strategy in working. So at first, let's look at the Sicilian, knight c3. That's how we play when we want to play Grand Prix. Well, most common move knight c6, and this is aimed on against the most common move. So chances are in 4 out of 5 games on knight c3 you will see knight c6, and here we play bishop b5, not f4 like we play in Grand Prix, but we play bishop b5 right away. Instead of playing bishop b5 on move 5, we play on move 3. The question is, are we going to do the same if black plays, for example, g6 and later on bishop g7? Are we going to be playing the same way as we play against, well, when we play Grand Prix? Here is my answer to this. When you play Grand Prix, just to give you a good idea, f4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, and bishop b5. In this position, by far, the main move is knight to d4. You have to keep this in mind. Now, when we play bishop b5 on move 3, if black answers the same way going g6, then we have few options. And I think the option I want to go with is bishop takes c6, b takes c, and now possibly d3, and on bishop g7, f4, transposing to Grand Prix, but with a very favorable pawn structure, for very favorable variation for white. So what it means that if black goes g6, we take on c6 and we avoided knight d4 move by black. So if black wants to play knight d4 and get Grand Prix at the same, they have to go knight d4 right away. That's what makes big difference. And now, if we went f4, g6, knight f3, we're gonna transpose to Grand Prix, but that whole system of playing bishop b5 on move 3 makes no sense. Now, on knight d4, white has two main continuations. One is bishop c4, and the other one is knight f3. Bishop c4 is the most common move, was played several times, but I have a big preference for knight f3 move, and I carefully analyzed this with Rybkas without finding a comfortable way for black to equalize. After knight f3, what happened? So we did not play f4. After knight f3, black has a possibility of taking on b5 or going e6. Also, another option is to go g6. So let's go with them. And here, when you will guaranteed to get position that you will know very well, and you will clearly know this position better than your opponent. First option after knight f3 is knight takes b5, knight takes b5, a6, knight c3. Those are most natural moves by black, and according to Rybkas, those are the best moves. Well, and without Rybkas, you can tell that these are most natural moves for black. And now d6. I have to point that e6 is a possibility as well, but then white goes d4 in both of those cases. White plays simply d4 here. So let's go d4, d6 now. So d4, c takes d, and queen takes d4. Now I have to point that white doesn't take with a knight. Normally in Sicilian, you always on d4 take on d4 with a knight. You never take with a queen on d4, almost never, because black still has knight on b8 and will be developed this knight on c6 with a tempo. But you see, this knight is exchanged, and now queen on d4 stands very well. And in my opinion, this position is highly unpleasant for black. And moves that have to be played here have to be very precise for white. White's idea to prevent black from natural development. So knight f6 to move. They cannot go g6 because rook is hanging. Knight f6 with possibly preparing for g6. Bishop g5 is very accurate move, stopping g6. After bishop g5, the only way for black to finish development is e6. I have to point that e5 is very weak move because after queen d3 just weakens d6 pawn and d5 square. So after bishop g5 in this position, e6 was played. There was one game, castle, bishop e7, rook a to d1, black castles, white takes on f6, and this position is already highly unpleasant for black. Taking with the bishop is not good because after queen takes, you see this position, even though white has double pawns on c, they have an extra pawn. Black's bishop is terrible on c8, and this is next to winning this position. Very big advantage for white. So since black cannot do that, cannot take on f6 with a bishop, they have to take with a pawn, and now they have damaged pawn structure, double pawns, somehow weak king, and two bishops are not very active in this position. In my opinion, this position is simply very bad. Just to take few moves, making few moves the way it happened in the game, a4, stopping b5, king h8, rook d3. You see, preparing rook to swing to h3 after moving the f3 knight, or possibly pile up rooks on the d file. Rook g8, knight d2, good move, preparing knight c4, attacking attacking the d6 pawn, and also preparing rook h3 at the same time. And after e5, queen e3, f5, f4, white's pieces stand much better. And not that we have to know exactly how the game developed, but I'm going to make a few more moves, and I think it's clear that black is in a lot of trouble in this position. Queen f8 was played, knight d5, and after fe, knight takes e4, f5, knight ec3. White has strategically winning position, dominating knight on d5, and endangered black king. White won easily this game. So now, what conclusion we came to is after knight c3, knight c6, bishop b5, and knight d4, we go knight f3, and that's what happens after knight takes b5 and knight takes b5. But in So no matter what black plays, white idea is to go d4, and on cd, queen takes d4. Even if g6 was played here. g6 probably is even a worse move. I play accelerated Draken and I recommend all the time, but this is bad time to go g6, because now after d4 you will see that cd is pretty bad, because knight f6, e5, and black does not have standard knight c6 move attacking white's king in this position, because that knight is off the board and position is pretty bad here. So this is actually very, very, in my opinion, favorable position for white. Now let's look at different option in this position for black. After knight f3, I think the better move is e6. And what I don't understand, that there were several games, including game on high levels. There was a game between quite famous grandmaster Smirin playing against Rajabov, and Smirin in this position, he played knight takes d4 cd and knight e2, and I saw a few other games played with the same position, and amazingly, this is a bad way to play, but amazingly black never took an opportunity to punish black for it. There was bishop c5 played, bishop queen b6 was played, a6 was played, but simple queen g5, it struck me, wait a minute, what can white do, a queen g5? But such a strong player never played queen g5, and their opponents, also strong players, allowed queen g5. It's a relatively simple double attack move, and I couldn't understand it, and I put it on Rybka, and Rybka, what she does, that gives, after queen g5, decisive advantage to black. So knight takes d4 after e6 is simply very, very bad move. The correct move is castle or bishop d3. I think one follows the other. So e6, we castle, and I want you to see that knight takes b5, knight takes b5. White is going to play d4, and all the analysis and all the evaluations that we applied, if black took on a knight takes b5 on a previous move, they are valid here as well. So after castling, black has to make a decision. How would they continue this game? a6 is the most common move that played here several times. Bishop d3, knight e7. Well, here, after knight e7, white has solid advantage. White played, they didn't get an advantage, but they have the advantage here if they had played correctly. C takes d, knight e2. Now, if black plays knight c6, white can easily go c3, d takes c, d takes c, and this position is clearly better for white. Now, let me explain you why. Because it seems like it's a very typical Sicilian defense, very typical position for Sicilian defense. It's not. D5, that is normally so good to play in Sicilian, it's not so good to play now because black is not developed yet. Black should play bishop e7. And then we can go simply a4, and after castling, bishop e3. Now we're trying, if we get a chance, to go a5, and then we're going to go f4. White has a lot better position because normally when black has counterplay on queen side, they don't have the counterplay. So in my opinion, this position is better for white. There is no big advantage, but I did mention in beginning of this DVD, you don't expect to get big advantage. You're gonna get very comfortable position with clearly outlined plan. So what you're gonna do next move, for example, if black goes d6, well, we can go queen b3. Now we have bishop b6 idea. We want to put the rook on d1. White has very comfortable position. They have no problem of placing their pieces. On move like knight e5, we can go rook fd1. We don't mind giving up that bishop. Now we're going to go rook a1 to david1 and go bishop b6. We have clear pressure in the center. Maybe even bishop f4, trying to put as much pressure on d6 and maybe enforce e5. So this position is better for white, but you also can simply retreat the bishop in this position to c2. I like white here, and I think you should too. So now let's go to the most competitive move here. After knight e2, d5. Now on d5 in the game that was played between two grandmasters, white went e5, missing very, very subtle continuations and very strong continuation. e5 is not the best move by far, but even here, white has some advantage. Let's go briefly, make few moves to get an idea about this position. I know these positions very well because the similar type of positions we get in Grand Prix all the time, and this position is a little better for white. f4, and here black supposed to play f6, but they didn't. They played knight b4, which I think is very weak move, and after a3, knight takes d3 cd. White got good size advantage because they went b4 and bishop b2 and won the d4 pawn. So we don't need to look at it. Even if black has equality here, it's not really important because that's not the way I would recommend you to play. This position is quite possible that you can reach in the game. And here there is a very, very strong move and very deep move by Rybka. Rybka came up with this move, and I like it. It took me a while to understand the depth of this move. The move is rook e1. The purpose of it is, if d takes e4 and bishop takes e4, now white wants to go c3. f5 is very bad move, because when white simply retreats to f3 or d3, there's knight f4 coming. Knight is coming to f4, which gives black very bad position. And the best move for black is not to take on e4, but go knight c6. If black takes on e4 and we take and goes knight c6, we simply go c3, and after c3, d takes c, d takes c, another harmless looking position, which is very bad position. It's a very bad position for black, because suppose they simply develop bishop e7, bishop f4, castle. I think this is nearly lost for black after bishop takes c6 and bishop d6. You can tell that if black takes and rook takes, pawn on c5 is in grave danger. That probably the best move is rook a7, but even then, after bishop takes, rook takes, and rook d6, followed by rook d1, knight is a much better piece in this position than bishop. Well, here's the proof. You can go knight d4, followed by knight b3 and knight c5. So this gives black very difficult game. So this position is already, after knight c6 and c3, very bad. On the other hand, white threatens bishop takes c6. For example, on this move, bishop takes c6 and knight takes d4, simply winning a pawn. So, and d3 is not good because of knight f4, simply winning the d3 pawn. That gives black no choice but to take on c3. But if bishop takes c5 is also not that pleasant because of b4, and after bishop b6, bishop b2, white has big lead in development and big advantage as well. So, going back to this position, so if we determine that after rook e1, de is not a good option for black, then knight c6 is left. But then we go c3. Now this also, it's a great analysis by Rybkas, and move by move white gets good size advantage. c3, again, if d takes c, d takes c, this is going to be highly unpleasant position for black. So they should try to play bishop e7, try to keep c1 bishop blocked. Now after bishop e7, another absolutely powerful move, queen c2. It looks like harmless, but it is very powerful move. Idea of queen c2, of course, if black castles, simply e takes d, winning the h7 pawn, and when black goes g6, and here you see why we played queen c2. E takes d. Now if queen takes, black simply loses a pawn after bishop e4, bishop takes c6, followed by knight takes d4. So black has to recapture with the pawn, but it looks okay for black because white bishop on c1 is blocked and white pieces are not too active. But now queen a4 is coming, and idea of queen a4 move is simply to take the pawn on d4 with the knight. And after queen a4, if black cannot go b5 because simply bishop takes b5, and black cannot play bishop f6 because e file opens. That's why rook e1 is such a strong move. And if black takes on c3, we take back on c3, and after castling, we have pretty big size advantage. There is a weak pawn on d5, white's piece is greatly developed, and black's king is compromised position. So here, maybe the best attempt for what black is to castle and to give a pawn, but knight takes d4, bishop d7. Now white is slightly behind in development. But if you go here simply bishop f1, it's a natural move preparing d3. If you go simply bishop f1, preparing d3 and developing the bishop, black does not have nearly enough compensation for a deficit of a central pawn. And if black tries b5, of course white is not going to retreat, giving themselves double pawns, but white is going to play simply knight takes c6 first, and then going maybe queen f4, maybe queen g4. So it's definitely no compensation here for a pawn. That's another big size advantage for white. So I briefly introduced you to some ideas. They're quite different from our Grand Prix, but it might merge with Grand Prix if black never plays knight d4, which is the main move here. And if they go g6, then it will merge with Grand Prix. So sticking with knight d4 move, as I already mentioned, I do recommend knight f3 as probably the best opportunity. Best opportunity may not be the best move, but I think it is. Best opportunity because black has quite a bit of problems to solve here. But nevertheless, I want to mention that there is also possibility to play bishop c4. And also, black has to solve some problems. And now you can go on and explore the positions after bishop c4. For example, to bring you one game, there was g6 played, and after g6, knight f3. You see, it's quite a different position. Bishop g7, knight takes d4, cd, and instead of normal knight e2, there is a queen f3 move, threatening queen takes f7, which is not very easy for black to reply against. After queen f3, suppose e6, most natural move, the killing the bishop on the diagonal, and also keep attacking the knight and preparing knight e7, good square for the knight. But then knight b5. Now the threat is knight d6 check, and black has to act quick. And I'll just want to show you how you can get unexpectedly from a normal position to totally lost position in a few moves. After d6, queen a3, and black is almost lost. On bishop e5, we can simply go castle, preparing f4, and black has no good moves here. It's absolutely hopeless for black. Now f4 is coming, and the position is something like a6. We're going to go also f4, and if black takes, they simply lose exchange for no compensation, and on bc, f takes e. But don't play bishop takes b5 check first, because bishop d7 will protect the rook on a8. So after queen takes a8, it's simply winning position. So I don't want to go in the very deep details of this variation with bishop c4. That's another thing for you to look into. What I wanted to do is I wanted to stick here with knight f3 move. Well, at the same time, I want to mention that bishop c4 is quite playable move. Honestly, I don't see easy equality for black, especially after knight f3. And if someone wants to play this against you, let them prove something we don't know. And finally, I want to go through the dangers of playing this position without proper knowledge. And I already mentioned you game played in beginning, game played between Smirin and Rajabov, game played in 2007, cd knight e2, which is a terrible way to play. Now, as I already mentioned, queen g5 is giving big advantage to black, but even without playing it, black got a very good position. a6, bishop a4, b5, bishop b3, bishop c5, and after d3, bishop b7, and after castle, knight e7, and then black played d5 with a very good position. Very badly orchestrated opening by white. So now let's go back. What do we do different? We, as I already mentioned, we don't take on d4. We simply castle here, and here we let black to make decision. Well, the most expected move is a6. a6 is normal move for Sicilian, and also frees black's d pawn from moving. So okay, now bishop d3 we play, and I already mentioned knight e7 that can be met with knight takes d4. And if a6 is not played and black plays knight e7, then we're gonna take, because, and after we go knight e2, a6 will transpose to the same position, and black does not have bishop c5 the way it happened in Rajabov game. Here we are very, very comfortable. So either way, so if you castle, what black has to make here decisions, and after a6, bishop d3 once more. I mentioned knight e7, knight takes, pawn takes, knight e2, giving black clear advantage. On knight c6 we go c3, and on d5 we make this powerful move, rook e1. So this is my brief introduction to third move, bishop b5 system. You may have some questions here which can be answered several different ways. Well, as I always mention, you can contact me, write to me through Chess for Less, finding my coordinates and emails, or use someone's advice, some good player's advice. Although players that don't have an experience in it and don't understand these positions that well, and there may be some very good players, so they may have difficulties giving you precise answer. But anyway, by exploring, by working on it, no matter what happens, you're going to have a lot better knowledge of this position than your opponent. This is the conclusion of analysis of bishop b5 system. Not very popular, not too many times played, and practically unknown. Now, next opening idea, or I would say great revelation in the opening, in the position older than a century. The position I'm talking about, e4, e5. It's like I recommend to play Scotch Gambit, and obviously black has an option to transpose to gioco piano, c3, knight f6, cd, bishop b4, bishop d2. Here, black has an option to take on e4 right away, or to take on d2 right away. So, by far, the most common move, and the best move as well, if bishop takes, knight takes, followed by d5, ed, and knight takes d5. Now this position is about a century old, over a century old. They've been played by Chigorin, Steinitz, Lasker, and many great players. In this position, it's known by searching database that there is practically one move only that makes sense. It's a queen b3 move. And I want to tell you a little story that is very, very important, and why this position is important, and why it's very important to talk about it. Queen b3, first of all, the whole idea of playing and learning main opening on e5, which is the two knights defense of Scotch Gambit, the way we play, where black has an option and to play gioco piano, and gioco piano can be played more than 50% of the time when you play e4. So that's why you cannot possibly underestimate the importance of this position, and it's known in modern theory that white has no advantage. I tried to develop queen b3, and after knight a5, queen a4, knight c6, I played even queen a3 move, trying to get a little edge, and that's what I recommended on DVDs. but it's hard for white to get any more than a minimal edge in this position, and eventually black equalizes it. This is one way to play, and the second way to play for black is knight e7. Also very tiny to non-advantage for white here. And this was always bothering me, how to get an advantage here. And this story is very important, I have to tell you before we get into this position. Nevertheless, I still recommend it to play against Giocopiano in Scotch Gambit, because there are a lot of positions you can learn a lot about the strategy, tactics, very interesting position. You learn chess. But now I am a lot more ambitious. And thanks to Rybkas, in this position, Queen b3 is absolutely not the best move. The reason why Queen b3 was played before castling, that white cannot play knight b6 because of bishop takes f7, and if white cannot play knight b6, then white has to play knight e7, and black has a little bind. After queen beat, if white castles instead, black can castle, and now queen b3 makes no sense at all. And that's why for 100 years no one has questioned queen b3 move, and it's the only move that was ever played, well, with an exception on very low level when they didn't even know about queen b3 move. By far the strongest move here that was revealed by hours and hours and hours of analysis, if not longer, castle. Castle is known as not very good move because after castling, black has absolutely no problem. In reality, with full confidence, and I'm taking responsibility on this statement, white has a clear edge in this position. This is very, very strong statement made by me, and I am ready to back it up with variations. Rybkas was 100% on my side, and she proved that black has absolutely no way whatsoever to equalize, and the move is rook c1. Here are the other moves. The other moves are knight e4 and rook e1. On both of those moves, black has equal position, at least, maybe a little advantage. When I made this statement that rook c1 gives white an advantage, I made this statement to a couple of grandmasters on very high level. I don't want to mention the names, and they thought it was laughable, making a statement that rook c1 gives white an advantage. After about 20 minutes of analysis, they were not so sure about black getting equality. After about 40 minutes of analysis, they were amazed, and after about an hour of analysis, they just gave up. This is probably one of the most staggering discoveries in one of the oldest variations in modern chess theory. In making this analysis available for you, I have to express great thanks to Grandmaster Larry Kaufman, with whom I'm working on various opening ideas together with Rybkas, and I have to express great thanks to him. He had a lot to do in making it possible. I have to explain you first why Rook C1. Rook C1, is important to have a Rook on C1, and it's important to have the Rook on E1. Meanwhile, Rook E1 is a bad move. Rook C1 is a move that gives White more advantage than normally they get in openings. I should say more advantage than they are entitled to in the opening. For example, if they're in the opening, they're entitled to about, in a computer language, 0.18 advantage. Here they get 0.30 or so. So let me explain you difference between Rook C1 and Rook E1. That's why those grandmasters were absolutely amazed. At first they thought I was joking about it. Rook E1 is a bad move. Idea of getting advantage in this position, you have to put a lot of pressure on Black's center. Queen on B3, meanwhile, was standing badly. Now it's nearly impossible because Knight A5 was standing badly because it was getting on the way. Rook E1 is a bad move because of Knight B6 continuation, which after Knight B6, Black wants to eliminate White's bishop on C4, after which White is going to have absolutely no advantage, and retreating bishop will lead to loss of a pawn. So that is clear. After Rook C1, Knight B6 does not serve the purpose, because on Knight C6, White simply plays Bishop B3. And now, if Black plays Knight takes D4, White gets good size advantage in all cases. So, here, Black has several different opportunities. They have Rook E8 move. They have Bishop G4 move. Of course, they have Knight B6 move. They even have Knight F4 move. Now, it's very hard to understand why White has an advantage here, and big advantage, unless you go through with those variations. And therefore we start with Knight B6, Bishop B3, and now suppose Knight takes D4. Then Knight takes D4, Queen takes D4, that's why Rook C1 was played, of course. Rook takes C7, and Black can play here Bishop G4 is one move, and Queen D6 is the other move. Let's go with Bishop G4 move. Now, after Bishop G4 and Knight F3, position is real bad for Black. Queen takes B2, Rook takes B7. Any type of endgame, like Queen takes D1, Rook D1, even after doubling pawns, it's very critical for Black. Black is almost lost here because of the dominating Rook on a 7th rank and extremely bad Knight on B6. this is not playable for black. So let's try queen takes b2, but then we take on b7, and white wants to go h3. f7 is terrible weakness, or for example on something like rook d8 there's a bishop takes f7 that simply wins a pawn for nothing. And if queen f6, then what white wants here is to go to endgame. Queen a1, possibly queen d4. In both cases, we don't want to go into deep analysis here. It's an obvious for, if you understand positions, it's obvious, and it will not be exaggerated if I tell you that black is almost lost here. They have absolutely terrible position, and nothing good can come out of it. Well, the only other option for black after knight takes d4 is to play queen d6. Now, suppose they play queen b6, queen d6. What can white do here? Now, after queen d6, the best move is queen c2. Just protecting the rook. Black takes an opportunity to play bishop f5. And then still they are very far from equalizing, because queen c5 again gives good size advantage to white. Exchanging queens, the bishop is hanging and the rook is coming back to c7 is not very pleasant, and taking the knight may even be worse than that. Queen takes f5, and b7 and f7 weaknesses are very critical, and whole position is very, very bad. So there is a quick conclusion that knight takes d4 leads to serious advantage for white. Well, not everything was analyzed. Even any ridiculous possibilities for black were analyzed by white here, by Rybkas. And conclusion that after knight takes, queen takes d4, and rook c7, we just looked at two best options, bishop g4 and queen d6. There may be bishop g4, queen d6, or queen takes b2, knight e4 will give white decisive initiative, and there is no good option for black. There are maybe other options that are much, much worse. Conclusion, this is a bad way to play for black. And now let's try to search for a good way to play. Now let's look at knight b6, bishop b3, and bishop g4. Something very, very important to understand this position. Black has no weaknesses. Black is not under attack. Nevertheless, white has good advantage. Now, and why is it? The reason why, because this position cannot be evaluated strategically. It has very concrete basis that you should go by, and that's why no one has ever got an idea to analyze this position. This is very concrete, and only with the help of Rybkas, with the depth of thinking of Rybkas, we can bring this variation and prove that black has no way to stabilize position by playing queen d6, rook d8, rook e8. That's not possible. And white has to get good pressure and big initiative within next 3-4 moves before black consolidates. Now, the move is h3. In this position, we go h3, and black has two options practically. Either take the knight, in which case white takes back, and white will go d5 next move, and rook e1. Black has very big problem here. So, for example, on queen d6, d5, we can go d5, and on knight e7, maybe not even d5, maybe just rook e1, and then queen c2, maybe even immediately queen c2, stopping knight from going to e7, and then trying to push d5. This is, Rybkas likes this position for white very much, and so do I, and I think white has good size advantage. Don't forget the weakness on f7 in some cases, if rook moves to e8 or something like that. Rook e8, for example, now loses right away after knight g5, attacking f7 and h7. So this is not a good position. If black doesn't take on f3, they have to go bishop h5. And now you will understand the power of h3 move. It's not just a general principle move, it's very concrete and very precise. After bishop h5, white plays rook c5, attacking the bishop on h5, and bishop must go to g6. There's no point of taking on f3 now, because black could have taken on previous move. So bishop g6. Now white goes rook e1. Now we can tell that white has advantage in development. After rook e1, black has very, very big problem. What to do next? How to conclude development? Queen d7 will be met with d5 followed by knight e5. So knight takes d4 is the best chance for black. Then we get similar position to once we looked. Queen takes d4, rook takes c7, rook a d8, knight f1, very strong move. Not knight f3, but knight f1. Knight is very well placed on f1, because now after queen b4, you will see why. Queen e2, rook d7, rook e1 to c1. This is difficult position to play for black as well. Knight will go to e3, where it's placed very well. Black has here absolutely nothing to look forward to. They have problems to worry about and no prospects. They are not even close to equality. White has many ways to improve position, and this is by far bigger advantage than you can get in any opening. So this is also, I would consider absolutely unacceptable for black. Now let's go back to the position after rook c1. So we got rid of those options, of knight b6 options. Now let's go with bishop g4. That's another very logical move suggested by the grandmasters that I spoke to as a first opportunity. Well, let's see what happens here. Obviously, it was very carefully analyzed by Rybka, and she still doesn't like black's position at all. When you have to notice that when you analyze this position, Rybka does not analyze it for white. She does analyze this position for black. She tries equally good opportunities and tries equally hard for both white or black. And bishop g4 is not her first choice. And here is why. h3. We already know bishop takes f3, knight takes f3 will be the same. Black is going to have a problem to deal with. Queen b3 with rook e1, and after h3, bishop h5. Well, actually, incidentally, after bishop takes f3, knight takes f3, I would say white advantage is significant, and in Rybka's language is about 0.30 something, so which is bigger than any other opening we are entitled to, any bigger advantage that we are entitled to any other opening. So after h3, bishop h5, and here white has two choices. And why do I want to bring two choices when all we need to know is a one choice? I'm explaining you why. At the beginning, Rybka was telling that rook e1 is the best move for black, and she liked the best move for white, and she liked this position for white. And here, what her analysis were based on. Now, suppose knight b6 is played. If knight b6, then Rybka wants to play bishop a6 move. And after knight takes d4, it's very unpleasant to take on a6 and have this double pawns. Knight takes d4, bishop takes b7, and on rook b8 she makes another absolutely brilliant move, rook c5, proving that she has an advantage. After rook takes b7, rook takes h5. If bishop takes f3, we can even take knight takes f3 and knight on d4 hanging. So if knight f3, bishop takes, white has better positional advantage, and Rybka correctly evaluates this position, and I agree with her 100% that white is better. But then we came to conclusion that Rybka found that she likes a lot better different move. Move is highly unnatural and very powerful, again, for concrete reasons. As you can remember, in this position, we said rook e1 is not very strong because knight b6 attacking d4 pawn, and we don't like to lose the bishop on c4, to exchange the bishop on c4. Here, in the contrary, after rook c1, bishop g4, h3, bishop h5, we play bishop takes d5. This is very good move, gives very good advantage. This is very, we are contradicting to our beliefs, but this is very concrete. Queen takes d5. Now rook c5 doesn't do anything because black simply plays bishop takes f3. But here white plays queen a4. Now, at first look, you can tell, what can black want more after the opening? But threat is rook c5 to winning a bishop on h5. Bishop takes f3 is by far the best move. Knight takes f3. And position is not very pleasant for black. For example, rook a d8, rook c5, queen d6, rook c1. What is black gonna do with the knight on c6? There is a big threat, d5. Knight takes d5 will give them very, very difficult end game. And rook takes c7. This is real bad end game, because after rook b4, b3, you can see that white is going to move rooks from c7 to d7 or e7, then double rooks on c7. White has excellent chances to win the game. And again, black has nothing to look forward to. Black can only look forward to maybe making a draw, but black has absolutely no real bright future in this position. Again, going back, very unorthodox decision, and again, as usual, very deep. Queen takes d5, queen a4, threatening rook c5, and forcing black to play knight takes f3. And now, rook c5 and rook fc1 guarantees white an advantage. So practically what we're going to be talking here about is only how big is the white advantage. You don't have a pleasure or luxury of talking how big is my advantage in this opening. Normally, the common question in the openings is, do I have any advantage? Here, we want to see how big is our advantage, because white goes rook c1, rook c5, well, on any move, just doesn't matter what black plays, rook c5 and rook c1. And then black has a lot more problems and weaknesses than white has on d4. Black has weakness on c7 with a potential d5. After c7, all their queen side will be in danger. Difficult position for black. Maybe they can hold on. Very, very hard work, but that's not something you want to play for black. I think while watching this DVD, by now you already realize that black has some problems to solve, and after many hours of analysis, Rybkas could not solve these problems for black. And now, if you play it, your opponent is going to have to solve these problems that Rybkas couldn't solve in hours and hours of the analysis. he has minutes to solve it at the board. Well, you know what chances for it are. So, nevertheless, let's continue with black's options. Okay, well, possible option is bishop e6. And what we're going to do on bishop e6 here is we're going to go simply rook e1. And after rook e1, black is going to make some decisions. So you see that if knight moves anywhere, this is going to be critical weaknesses on e4, b7, on e6, b7. How is black going to untie themselves from a pin? Knight c, e7? Okay, we can go knight e4, trying to go knight c5, maybe knight g5, queen b3. If you take a look at this position, you will see the absolutely ideal placement of white's pieces. Black has big problems. And if Rybkas didn't like some of the positions black had in the previous variations we just looked at, she really hates this one. So that's what would happen on a move like bishop e6. Now let's look at rook e8. This Rybkas considers as one of the best continuations, maybe the best continuation for black, but it's still far not equalizing continuations. White has to make absolutely precise move here, and precise move to, as I mentioned over and over and over again, and I am going to mention again because I cannot underestimate the importance of understanding this position. We cannot let black painlessly develop and stabilize position and consolidate. So we go rook e8, creating immediate threat of rook takes rook and taking knight on d5. After rook e1, black's best move, rook takes e1, queen takes e1, and now black has two choices. They can go knight c to e7, or they can go to bishop e6. Well, let's look at them both. On knight c to e7, we simply go knight e4. And again, I personally don't know how black is going to consolidate here, because bishop f5 can be met with knight c5, bishop e6 will also be met by knight c5, bishop g4 is not any better because it's going to be knight e5. You see knight on d5 under pressure, pawn on f7 weak. White's piece is absolutely dominating, and black has not finished even development yet. This is more double or triple compensation for the weak d4 pawn, which is not even weak at this point. So maybe better option is bishop e6, and still white gets, well, maybe this is the smallest advantage white can get in this variation, but it's still an advantage, and it's still not easy for black to equalize. After bishop e6, knight e4. Again, deadly threat of knight c5. Knight f4 now. Trying to exchange pieces. what you're going to see next is almost forced. Bishop takes, knight takes. Again, taking with f-pawn is severely weakening black's pawn structure, and this is almost lost. Also according to Rybkas, and I agree with it 100%. Bishop takes, knight takes. And now rook d1. Creating a simple elementary threat d5. Taking on d4 is out of question, because after queen e3 black simply loses, so this cannot be considered. And after rook d1, best move is knight e7. Well, this looks satisfactory for black, because they exchanged some minor pieces, they exchanged rook, they exchanged bishop, which is exchange of pieces favors black in these types of positions, because they have a better chance of equalizing. They were under the pressure. But after knight e7, they want to play knight d5. White still maintains good size advantage. After knight c5, attacking c5 and b7, black must take on c5, dc, and knight d5. Well, that looks really okay for black, because they're gonna go c6, next move, which will mount their knight on d5, and black is doing okay, looks like. However, there's a little surprise here. Knight e5, threatening c6, which forces c6, and now when black is so close to happiness, to knight c4, putting knight on d6 will create serious problems for black. b6, it's by far the best move, because now knight d6 will be bc, and b4 makes more weaknesses for black, and looks like black is very close to equalizing. However, after b6, white plays knight e3. That shows you how resourceful Rybkas' analysis are, and why this position is so bad for black. No, this is not so bad. White just simply has good advantage. After knight e3, b takes c, knight takes d5, cd, queen e5. There is no way black can equalize here. d4 is going to lose a pawn for black. d4 pawn. On rook c8, simply rook takes d4. Rook takes d4 may be met by queen e8, but maybe not even rook takes before. Queen takes a7. It's simply an extra pawn for white. So, and according to Rybkas, this position, white has an advantage. I agree 100%. We're going to take d5 pawn, we're going to have more active position, and black has some weaknesses. After we win d pawn, c pawn is going to be weak, and we have more active queen and the rook. Whether it's enough to win or not, we don't know. But again, this is position where only two results can be there. Either white wins or it's a draw. That's a dream of every chess player. When you play for a win without any risk of losing. And at the same time, play for a win is not based on your enthusiasm, but it's based on position evaluation. So after queen takes e5, if black goes f6, white simply goes queen f5. So this is very, very good position for white again. There is no way for black equalizing here. And now going back again to the position, to the original position after rook c1. Another opportunity just to cover almost every move by black. We'll look at knight f4. It's a very unnatural move. Knight on f4 placed artificially and does not create any threats except for knight takes d4. So we go knight e4, and after bishop g4 we simply go rook e1. And you see how masterfully we continue bringing pieces in the game, undermining our weakness on d4. Black has never have any chance to win a pawn, not even if they take here. Queen takes, attacks the knight on f4, and again, absolutely ideal development for white and problem for black. So again, on the third, bishop g4, rook e1, and on bishop h5, knight c5. Position is also, as usual, very unpleasant for black. These are absolutely flawless analysis by Rybkas, guided by me, meaning like I tried to find some kind of equality for black, and I was desperate trying to search for black, and that's the way actually you should look into some variation. That's the general advice. When some people find some novelty and some good idea, they have very wishful thinking, and sometimes they don't search as hard for opponents. And I do completely opposite. Whenever I find some idea I want to do, I want to play, the first I absolutely concentrate on refuting my own idea, because by trying it that way, you get on the bottom of the truth, and that's how you find what's right and what's wrong. So this position is better for white, and whole variation after rook c1, castle, castle, and rook c1. Move that was never, and a position that was never considered serious for white, and position is that more than 100 years old, is, in my opinion, and based on what we just looked at, should be a real threat for black. Okay, now that we concluded analysis of rook c1 move in Giocopiano, what conclusion can we make? The conclusion we can make is that the Giocopiano variation favors white, Giocopiano opening. Well, this is very strong words and very strong statement. So if after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, now I have to point that Giocopiano, the position we just analyzed, can be reached through this move order, and also it can be reached through different move order by playing d4 first and after ed bishop c4 and bishop c5. So the point I want to make here is if we play bishop c4, white has practically two moves, knight f6 and bishop c5. Well, only other move here is bishop e7, Hungarian defense, that where white always gets space advantage in kind of free initiative for no compensation for black. So if we consider two main moves, bishop c5 and knight f6, what I can tell you is bishop c5 leads us to Jacobiano we just looked at, and I think exhausting analysis show that white has an advantage. So does that mean black is going to have to play knight f6? But then we play knight g5, and it's very important if you want to polish your opening repertoire. I give very conclusive analysis where I dedicated almost whole DVD on this and practically reversing the evaluation of this opening. The statement I make that because of the new analysis by Rybkas and new careful examinations of this position, white has an advantage. Now, if white has an advantage after knight g5, after knight f6, knight g5, and white has an advantage in Jacobiano, what's for black to play? Well, that's not for me to answer this question, and frankly, it's not our concern if we're playing white. Now, I think not without basis, I can make a statement that maybe bishop b5 will be replaced, the Ruy Lopez will be replaced by bishop c4. And so far, bishop c4 sounds like a better move based on analysis until it's proven otherwise. Well, actually for many, many years, I mean maybe like 40 years or even more, question was bothering me. If we strictly follow basic opening principles, why should bishop on f1 put on b5 square when I was thought for many years that you put bishop pieces in the opening the most active, most progressive squares, and I think most active square is bishop c4. But this is just statement without any analysis. Now I'm very glad that I can back it up with very lengthy and very detailed analysis of both openings of the knight f6, knight g5, as well as bishop c5, c3, which is Jacobiano. Well, it's black's turn to work hard and to find any hole in those analysis, because until then, if you get these two openings combined and study them hard, you're gonna create some serious problems in e5 move, in e4, e5 move. So good luck to you, and I hope you capitalize on this analysis as quick as possible, because before the new chain starts of playing of these openings. I hope you're going to be one of the first ones who will try to capitalize on it. Thank you very much, and have a very good luck with it.